What do Diwali and Dia de los Muertos have in common? More than you might think. BCAI Cultural Art and Humanities in Bloomington combined two holiday celebrations today. There were educational displays about each holiday, and a DJ played music to keep their energy high. A family from Mexico created a traditional ofrenda to teach people about the Day of the Dead, complete with marigold flowers, photos of loved ones who have passed on, and food. For Diwali, there was a celebration of light. A henna artist was there, and a local Indian restaurant, Fusion Crunch, gave people a taste of South Asian culture.
I am personally here to learn about the other cultures that are demonstrating their, culture in the event. So I would want to learn that and see how everything together can be improved upon and brought in back for next year again.
During the event, people mingled and taught each other about their traditions. BCAI says the success of events like this is the individual connections between cultures that can form. Their goals are to foster social cohesion and improve mental health through cultural appreciation.